Slice of Life, Chapter 4. Pull! Celestia winced as the noise reverberated across the mountainside like a cannon shot. With butterflies floating in her stomach, she glanced upwards at the mountain peak which still loomed miles above her. It would be a miracle if today didn't end with a landslide. With the way the ancestors had been treating her thus far, she highly doubted that things were in her favor. What are you waiting for? Celestia looked behind and gave a resigned stare at the pony behind her. This is best. Schwarzenwalder no understand fatty pony. Celestia spat out the wooden bit that had been shoved into her mouth and took a moment to extract a stray splinter from her tongue. Can't I take a rest now? The red stallion gave a disappointed grunt. Now? We still have a quarter of the path to go. Just a few minutes, Celestia panted, her haunches slick with sweat. Schwarzenwalder grumbled but climbed off of the massive cube of cinder blocks he had been sitting on and walked over to the white alicorn. With all the delicacy of coarse sandpaper, he helped her out of the bridle she was attached to that had connected her to the building supplies. Fine. Princess may take 5-minute break. Then we go back to path. Celestia took a deep breath and promptly collapsed onto the dirt path. Her white limbs sprawled outwards. Her magic fumbled for the small canteen of water at her side, lifting the flimsy container to her lips. She took a sip of the life-giving water and was sorely disappointed at how little of it was left. It gave her just enough strength to lift her head up and stare into the sunset. Not her sunset, the sunset. Celestia suddenly found herself far too busy to lower the sun herself, completely preoccupied with other things, like dragging a ton of cinder blocks up a mountain. She made note to send her court wizards a basket of muffins. The goddess inwardly wondered to herself when her world had gone to the diamond dogs. Not just by being a princess and dealing with snooty nobles in foreign affairs, but what exactly was the fatal touch that had collapsed the whole house of cards? What indulgence was it that had done her in? Had it been the triple scoop of raspberry and chocolate ice cream last Tuesday? That bucket of caramel-covered popcorn at the opera the week before? Had it been the second layer of chocolate syrup on that guard last night? Celestia was going to kill herself if it had been that. Celestia growled to herself, feeling her face grow hot at the very thought. That couldn't have been it, could it? Celestia silently bit her lip, the taste of bitter iron spreading across her tongue. If it was, she would find some way to travel back in time and slap that sugar-addicted succubus into oblivion, and then stick her hoof right up her... A mound of navy fur let out a tiny snore from where she was curled up on the mound of cinder blocks, and shifted in her sleep, burying her face further into her forelegs. The white alicorn spared a small smile for her sister, purely because it took fewer muscles to smile than it did to frown, or snarl threateningly. With every muscle in her body feeling like some pony had injected sulfuric acid into them, she felt it was best to exert herself as little as possible, happily adding her own generous weight to Schwarzenwalder's iron bulk. After all, who wouldn't want an all-deluxe, bona fide princess-drawn carriage made entirely of cement? Only recently had the night goddess fallen asleep, tuckered out after staying up for hours after her usual time. Celestia narrowed her eyes at the adorable filly. A lesser pony would have thought of nothing other than the aura of innocence that the night goddess radiated. But Celestia knew that beneath the cherubim exterior was a mind that even now was filled with nothing but evil. A butterfly gently settled on Luna's nose. The night goddess's nose twitched in her sleep and let out a tiny sneeze. The butterfly calmly flew off, only to flutter around and resettle again onto Luna's hair. Pure evil! Break over, Schwarzenwalder shouted, tossing the bridle back to the goddess. Hold this rope and pull, princess! Celestia sighed and with a great reluctance slipped her royal head back into the bridle and chomped down on the wooden bit. With her feet feeling like lead, Celestia's shoulders felt hard with each step, her haunches burning from the pressure. She could dimly hear Schwarzenwalder pushing her onwards behind her, with brief interruptions of Luna's snores. Celestia lifted her head up, swallowing the thin mountain air, and cast her mind back to how this insanity started. Earlier that day. And 1, and 2, and 1, and 2, recited the trainer, a green filly with a light yellow mane as she squatted in place. Bend those knees, fillies! The small army of elderly mares sluggishly picked up their paces, snippets of gossip moving among the crowd as they mimicked their instructor. A few other fillies jogged on some of the treadmills, and no pony was even touching the weights save for one mare who looked suspiciously like a stallion in drag. With a grace that could only be achieved by thousands of repetitions, Slender Flank blew a bubble of gum. She settled more into her seat at the reception counter. The filly gave a brief glance around the gym. Slender Flank hated to admit it, but it was a slow day. Heck, it had been a slow week. The number of ponies who showed up at the gym anymore, let alone those who had purchased memberships, had been steadily declining these last few years. The pony had inherited the all-mares gym from her parents when they finally decided to opt for retirement after almost 30 years of business. It was less of an all-mares gym now and more of a please, some pony, just walk through the door gym, since Slender had decided to open membership to both genders to attract more customers. Business had never been incredible, but it seemed less and less mares seemed to care about actually working out so much as they were counting the calories in their hay. As she watched the drag pony bench press half of its own weight, Slender began to truly consider scrapping the entire thing and selling the Haunches gym. "All right, ladies, let's begin bending exercises. Chin to your hooves," said the trainer. The filly gracefully bent her back, managing to touch her chin to the tip of her hooves. Slender winced as an audible pop echoed throughout the gym. It wasn't her gum, that was for sure. "Consarn it, my hip's done and gone out again," Granny Smith cried, pressing a hoof to her back. Slender's eyes twitched as another chorus of pops joined the first. Once again, it wasn't her gum. She would have to have yet another conversation with Brisk Jog. Slender gave a sigh, increasing the size of the pink bubble attached to her lips, and turned the page in her Cosmopolitan magazine. No, she didn't need to have a talk. She needed a miracle. "Ding-a-ling!" chimed the doorbell as some ponies stepped into the gym. As if on cue, Slender discreetly popped her bubble of gum and sat up in her seat. Slender put on her biggest smile and looked up at the newest person. "Welcome to Haunches Gym, where we're guaranteed to make you the leanest, meanest, and most perfectly sculpted pony that you can be—" "What are you doing here?" Slender screamed. She angrily got out of her seat, staring daggers at the giant red pony who barely managed to fit through the doorframe, his bulk completely obscuring it. "Schwarzenwalder is here to make ponies the leanest, meanest, and most perfectly sculpted ponies they can be." Slender gave an angry growl and walked right up to Schwarzenwalder, poking him in the chest with her hoof. It was like an ant trying to punch a boulder. "I told you to get out and never show your face here again, and I meant it. Get out of here." "Schwarzenwalder is here for his old job back." Slender could only gawk at him, words failing her. Was he serious? Yes, he was. Schwarzenwalder probably didn't have enough brain cells to be anything but serious. Slender Flank furiously shook her head, tossing her lemon hair back and forth. "Absolutely not, especially not after what happened last time." "It is not Schwarzenwalder's fault old pony's limbs were made of tissue paper." "I'm still paying his hospital bills. That pony was lucky that they were able to reattach his lower half correctly." "Old pony will be fine." "He has to drink his food through a straw." "Liquid diet give more nutrients to scrawny frame. He have skin of iron next time." "Don't even get me started on all of the sexual harassment." "Schwarzenwalder is not apologizing for that," the red giant grumbled, pushing past the tiny filly before him. "I mean it. Don't make me call the guard." Schwarzenwalder ignored her and instead began rummaging around stacks of metal plates used for weight training. "What are you doing?" "Excuse me, is everything all right, my little pony?" asked the graceful voice behind Slender. "No, everything is not all right. I. Slender Flank trailed off, her eyes becoming the size of dinner plates as she turned around. She'd been so focused on Schwarzenwalder, she completely failed to notice. That pony was huge, for ancestors' sake. The ponies that had come in with him. Immediately, Slender caught herself and knelt before none other than Princess Luna herself. No, not only Princess Luna. Princess Celestia was here too. The princess looked as though she belonged in an 80s workout film. "Your Highness, what are you doing here?" Princess Celestia didn't exactly seem thrilled at the situation she was in. "My sister and I would like to join your gym," Celestia mumbled. Slender's mood perked up considerably, and the filly tried very hard to keep her face from spreading into a grin. Of course, Your Majesty. For how long?" "Just for about a month," Luna nudged her sister with her elbow. 2 months. Another elbow in the ribs. 3 months. I'd like a 3-month membership here. Celestia balked, sending a glare at her sister. Luna had a proud and smug look stretched across her face as Celestia gingerly rubbed her ribs. Both sisters looked back to see a massive smile stretch across Slender Flank's face, threatening to encompass her entire face. The filly seemed on the verge of exploding with happiness. Of course, anything at all, Your Highness. Here at Haunches we boast the new and most fitness equipment to offer you a workout regimen suited to your own special needs. We also have a wide selection of trainers who are always happy to work hoof on with you. Luna gently interrupted Slender. Schwarzenwalder is going to be my sister's trainer. Slender Flank's brain decided at that point and time to go on holiday. What? Luna smiled eagerly and waved a hoof towards Schwarzenwalder, who was busy trying to straighten a barbell he had accidentally stepped on. Is he not magnificent? He has been hoof-picked to help my sister bulk up. A cautious smile flitted across Slender's face. I'm sorry, Your Highness, but I'm afraid Schwarzenwalder no longer works here, the filly said, her eyes glancing at the stallion who was now proceeding to bash the dumbbell against the wall. But we have trainers just as qualified. Brisk Job does a wonderful job. I'll even train personally to ensure you get the best possible treatment here, she quickly added. Nevertheless, it is Schwarzenwalder we would like to work with. We can assure you, bits are not an issue. Slender gently chewed on her lip. This was a bad idea. All right, he can stay. Feel free to use any of our facilities, or any of our other trainers while you're here, Your Majesties. Luna thanked the filly and turned back to her sister. Celestia was staring morosely at the front cover of the Cosmopolitan magazine on Slender Flank's desk. Such beautiful ponies. Her hoof gently touched her stomach. There was no doubt she could pinch more than just an inch. Such thin ponies. We're all set to go. Celestia looked up at her sister. The alicorn was trying to eagerly nudge her to the set of weights that Schwarzenwalder had accumulated. Luna, I'm not sure about this, Celestia whispered quietly. Luna gave a confused look at her sister. Why not? Celestia nervously pawned at the floor. It's Schwarzenwalder, Celestia lied. Doesn't he seem off to you? Luna looked at the beefy pony whose mane practically scraped the ceiling of the gym. He seems a finer specimen than any of the ponies thou hast protecting us. Normal ponies aren't that big. He's massive. That can't be normal. Thou surprises me, sister, Luna said softly. Thou used to admire such stallions who would sit with us in our feasting halls all those years ago. Those same warriors who would boast of having fought a manticore single-hoofed and then warmed thine bed. All right, Celestia said quickly, a blush coming to her cheeks. It's just, something just doesn't seem right about him. There's no way he got that big without steroids. Luna gave a quizzical look. Steroids? I'm saying he has fake muscles. Look, there's nothing wrong here. I'll show thee, Luna whispered to her sister. She tapped the trainer on the shoulder. Mr. Schwarzenwald? Ja, the beefy stallion rumbled as he glanced back to look at her. There was a clink as he slid another disc of iron onto the bar. Celestia gave a whimper as she watched Schwarzenwald add more and more weight. The wooden floor beneath the dumbbell was beginning to sag downwards from the accumulated discs, but the trainer took no notice of this. What exactly is thy duties here at the gym? Luna asked politely. Schwarzenwalder's face stretched into a rather hair-raising smile, his pinprick-like eyes fixated on the little moon goddess. Celestia suddenly felt a great urgency to grab her sister and get the buck out of there. Schwarzenwalder lifts things up, and Schwarzenwalder puts them down. Luna frowned in confusion and tilted her head. Surely that is not all thou dost here. Schwarzenwalder lift things up, and Schwarzenwalder put them down, Schwarzenwalder replied again before turning fully around to face the royal sisters. What looked like a thick pillar of metal lay horizontally on the ground before him, almost as thick as Celestia was tall. He bent down on a knee and placed his great head underneath what remained visible of the bar, letting the hoof-long opening slip over his neck. Celestia looked on in disbelief. There's no possible... With a mighty guttural roar, the red giant's entire body bent back up, taking the massive weight with it. Veins stuck out like ropes along Schwarzenwalder's neck as the barbell settled evenly on the stallion's mighty shoulders. His tiny eyes now practically bugged out of their sockets, looking ready to pop out at any moment. Now. Way, Celestia finished weakly. She suddenly found herself unable to properly realign her jaw, which seemed to have detached itself from its socket and now hung limply. Luna, on the other hand, beamed at the pony, her eyes shining in admiration at the Herculean feat of strength. Schwarzenwalder nodded in approval at the weight, rolling his shoulders. The red giant bent and straightened his knees a few times, lifting the load with him. "This is good," Schwarzenwalder said. He then looked dead at Celestia. "Catch." "Catch? What did he mean by—" Celestia's eyes widened in horrified realization. The goddess desperately tried to backpedal away from the trainer. "No, no, 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 no!" For the second time that day, Celestia's life flashed before her eyes. Once again, she was sorely disappointed. Her diet didn't allow buttery popcorn. Schwarzenwalder bucked the dumbbell off his back and into the air. With a precision that should have been impossible, it soared through the air with the fatality of a nuclear warhead to land squarely on Celestia's back as she tried to scramble away. Pain. Celestia was no stranger to pain. More than once she had fought in the front lines alongside her little ponies. More than once she had thrown herself carelessly in front of dangers of horrific nature to protect her subjects from them. She had bled as was flesh maimed by griffin claw. She had endured as entire body scorched and burned by dragon fire. Once she even had her horn snapped off, and she had persevered, night after night, from hours and hours of paperwork. She had many words on the sacrifices she had made for her little ponies. But for this, well, only one word would suffice. "Oh my gosh, this thing is killing me. I want to die. Please, some pony, kill me now." Celestia's legs quivered, turning into jelly as the edge of the world around her went dark. It felt as though some pony had fused her spine together into a toothpick, and then had proceeded to smash said toothpick with a mallet. The floor groaned beneath her as it had with Schwarzenwalder. Her brittle glass legs wanted so desperately to give out, but found themselves unable to, locked in place by the weight. Good. Princess can lift weight. Not too soft." Schwarzenwalder nodded in approval. He then bent down and pressed his face close to Celestia's. The goddess's stomach churned, struggling to keep her lunch down. The giant was an overwhelming combination of sweat and body odor. "I am going to pump you up. Fatty Princess shall have muscles on her muscles," Schwarzenwalder shouted, his voice blowing back Celestia's ethereal hair. He reared back onto his back hooves and struck a pose. His forehoof pointed to the ceiling. Schwarzenwalder's entire body seemed to double in size as the pony flexed every muscle in his body. Celestia could have sworn having triceps that big were unhealthy. "Lift those 50 times for a warm-up. We move on to cardio workout afterwards. Soon Princess will have muscles like Schwarzenwalder." 50? Celestia groaned through braced teeth. She sent a pleading look to her sister. Equestria be damned. Just a flare of Luna's magic and the sweet embrace of death would be hers at last. Luna caught Celestia's look and gave the briefest of smiles before a scowl of disapproval crossed Luna's face. With all the weight of the night itself, the goddess approached the trainer. "Schwarzenwalder, this is absolutely ridiculous. How can you possibly think that this is any sort of satisfactory warm-up?" Luna protested for her sister, stamping her hoof down. Schwarzenwalder raised an eyebrow at his sovereign. "Explain. Schwarzenwalder do not follow." Celestia gave an involuntary shudder as her lower body slowly began to grow numb to everything. She just had to last another minute. Nay, just another few seconds. Luna would be able to speak up for her. Luna was going to chew out the trainer and he'd make her do something a little more sane. Luna was... "The weights are far too light," Luna exclaimed, pointing a hoof at the massive iron on her sister's back. "Look at her. This is not but a walk through the park for a pony who races the sun each day. Surely you have something heavier at hand to put her royal limbs to work." Luna was going to throw her sister under a bus. The alicorn could almost hear the squeak of the hamster wheel in Schwarzenwalder's brain as the trainer stroked his boulder of a chin with his hoof, pondering this idea. Celestia's look of hurt Betrayal to Luna was returned with one of innocent confusion. Celestia's brain made a note to herself that if she survived this, she was going to have to find a new sister. That princess has a point, the trainer pony exclaimed suddenly, his voice booming through the gym. Schwarzenwalder has new idea. Better idea. Schwarzenwalder will double, no, triple the weights. This will help get Fatty Princess back in shape 3 times fast. On second thought, scratch that prior note about finding a new sister. There was no bucking way Celestia was going to survive this. Luna excitedly raised a hoof. Oh, I have an idea. What if after this she adds 1,000 push-ups and 1,000 sit-ups to the warm-up? That was it. Luna was getting written out of the will. Yes, but this is not workout for Pony. This is workout for Goddess. 2,000 push-ups and sit-ups. My wardrobe of gala dresses and evening gowns will go to fleur-de-lis. Sure, the nobility would flip their lids at the mere thought of a born commoner wearing the cloth of royalty, so I'm hoping they all have simultaneous strokes and better the gene pool when she actually does. They can go suck salt for all I care. For her cardio, she should run on hot coals. It will be like being in a sauna and taking a run. And I'd like to leave the contents of my private library to my beloved student, Twilight Sparkle. I sincerely hope she enjoys and puts to use the things she'll learn in my cosmopolitan collection and trashy romance novels. When Princess is all done, she can take a cool-down swim of 3 miles upriver. Schwarzenwalder knows butcher who will supply the steak and piranha. I'd also like for her to have my personal toy collection for her own pleasure. I have no idea where she's going to find housing for the Royal Guard, but I'm sure that massive tree can house more than a few. How does that sound, sister? Soon you'll look just like you were years ago, Luna asked her sister with a wide smile, only for it to vanish in surprise at her sister's appearance. Celestia's limbs were juddering, her eyes vacant of anything but the strained expression of anguish stretched out across her ashen-hued face. Sister, art thou all right? This seemed to snap Celestia out of her daze as she feebly looked up at Luna. Water began to collect at the corners of the sun goddess's eyes. No time for chit-chat, Schwarzenwalder boomed from the other side of the gym. Several other ponies covered their ears from the deafening shout. Start lifting. Schwarzenwalder find heavier weights for Fatty Princess. Luna sighed and brushed a limp strand of hair out of her sister's eyes. Come now, sister. Thou can do this. Celestia gave a timid nod. Time to meet the Reaper. With every fiber of power in her divine body, Equestria's goddess of the sun attempted to stand back up. Apparently, some things were impossible for even a goddess. Celestia's back muscles screamed themselves into an oblivion of pain as her spine struggled to lift the weight of the dumbbell. The wood flooring groaned beneath her as she braced her hooves for purchase against the crushing gravity that was working against her. It was bending downwards at a dangerous angle, and several ponies working out around them were backing away. Celestia's eyes felt as though they were ready to shoot out of her skull like ping-pong balls. Just a little more, Tia. Thou art almost a quarter, nay, a third of the way there. By sheer divine providence, Luna's cheering wasn't helping at all, Celestia was able to lift the weight centimeter by centimeter until finally she found herself back in the standing position from earlier, the dumbbell at the height of its ascent. 1. Celestia counted, her legs as shaky as ever. A bead of sweat rolled down the goddess's white fur to her chin. Celestia's eyes tracked it as gravity once more decided to flip her the middle finger, and the drop fell to the floor, splattering against the wooden panels. There was a sudden groan of stressed sounds and a rapid series of cracks as wood began to snap. The sun goddess looked down at spiderwebs of cracks which formed themselves in the floor underneath Celestia. The groaning grew louder. Celestia looked back up at Luna. Oh, buck me in the... The floor suddenly gave way underneath the goddess, the wooden paneling shattering completely and dropping the princess into what Luna could only assume was the basement. The night princess winced as she heard the dumbbells hit something that sounded very white. Luna dashed over to the hole and stuck her head in, trying to see if her sister had survived. Sister, is thou all right? Schwarzenwalder came back with a new series of weights stacked on his back. He merely stared in silence for a few moments at the chasm that had appeared in the middle of the gym before pressing a hoof to his face. Fatty Princess is truly a tubby pony,